Hey everyone, just wanted to do another update since there's been some interest shown in a Hierophant version of this build, and because power charge stacking has gotten so incredibly expensive, decided to see what we could do without that. Um, to start off, this version of the build, there are so many different versions you can do of Hierophant. You can go full mana stacking. I'm doing partial mana stacking. You can go in stacking. There's lots of different uniques, such as Crown of the Inward Eye. There's Indigon. There's the Ivory Tower. I decided to settle on something close to what I did last league. Replica Feral's Fur. I splurged on this chest and paid 25 divines for it. You can pick up one that's almost just as good for, 2, 3 divines. But how it works is you gain your maximum frenzy and endurance charges when you gain cat's agility, and you have onslaught while you have cat's agility. So you just need to roll aspect of the cat on either your gloves, your boots, or your helmet. You can also roll it on a ring. I rolled it on my helmet just because I had an open suffix on it that I didn't need anything else for. Really, it's up to you. There's some people on PoE Ninja that have it rolled on their gloves, and they got an Abyss socket in their helmet. There's some that are doing a brand 6-link brand instead of 6-link Frostbolt, which I'm probably going to try next. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I'll hop into the core mechanics though. So at its base, this one is going to be using non-damaging ailments such as chill and shock, as well as crit multi, rather than power charges to build your damage. And then also using endurance charges for tankiness, frenzy charges for a bit of DPS, and then aspect of the cat. I'm also running Sublime Vision with Zealotry, so we're only running a Zealotry Aurora and aspect of the cat since it has no reservation. Another thing I should point out with aspect of the cat is you want a less duration support in whichever piece of gear that you have it in, because this actually links to aspect of the cat. I don't have a link to any of the others, it's just linked to its own, but it affects aspect of the cat. And so I only have cat stealth for 2 seconds now, which means I pretty much always have cat's agility up. Going into the core mechanics here, we're using, I like recovery on kill, just because when I'm doing simulacrum, it lets me stand still and recover a lot of life while I'm doing the higher end waves. You don't have to, you can just dodge. I like to stand still because I'm lazy. And then stacking shocks from your hit always increase damage taken by at least 10%. I've got 2 charms, and then I'm using in that which was taken jewel. I got this one for 6 divines. I know it's worth a lot more. It had low rolls. I threw a couple divines at it and got lucky and hit max rolls on everything. Important things to have on here: shocks from your hit always increase damage by at least 10%. If you can't get that on this one, then you'll need a 3rd charm with it. You'll want 30% for this build. And then increased effect of non-damaging ailments you inflict with critical strikes is also huge, because that increases the effect of that 10% shock. And then we're also stacking some increased effect of non-damaging ailments elsewhere on the tree, as well as some increased chance to free shock and ignite. And because we're using a cold skill, we have to get fire and lightning damage from somewhere, so I've got it crafted on this ring here. Because we're using a base 30% shock, no matter how much lightning damage we do, you really don't need very much. And then we're scaling it from that 30% to 50%. And so the lightning damage you can craft on a ring is plenty. And a way that you'll want to check that is just do a pinnacle boss, a unique boss, a map boss, whatever, and just start hitting them. And if you see 50% shock, 30% chill, you're doing good. I don't always have 30% chill. I don't know why. Sometimes it's 21%, sometimes it's 30. And it doesn't matter whether it's pinnacle or uber or map boss. I need to take a better look at my build and see what's going on there. As far as defensive layers, I decided to go for more rare items. Most of these I crafted myself. Cost me... the build in total cost about 150 divines without mage blood. You can do it for a lot cheaper. I just wanted to see what it was like when I had max chaos resistance and almost max spell suppress. I've also got pretty good spell block. I'll dive into the POB here in a second to show you. As far as important mods, on the rings you want cast speed. I went tier 1 cast speed on both of them. This one I actually bought the base that had tier 1 cast speed and tier 1 resistances on both of the suffixes, and then I just crafted the rest myself. It's pretty easy, just suffixes can't be changed. Veiled Chaos, go for craft mana, go for life, etc. Amulet also crafted myself. This took forever. Saved me like 70 divines though, so I highly recommend. It's a long and difficult craft, but definitely worth it. And again, we're getting increased effect of non-damaging ailments here. So should have nearly 100% increased effect of non-damaging ailments. You don't quite need that much since we're 30% shocking. You just need enough to get that 30% to 50% since that's the max shock you can inflict. As well as other tech, I like being able to knock back enemies on hit, especially since we're hitting so many times with Ice Nova.
Battery
this keeps
critical.
Everything away from you for the most part, which is another good defensive layer. This build is definitely tanky and can take several hits, but it's just another nice defensive layer to have. Got a Corrupted Blood Storm Shroud. You can get Corrupted Blood on something else. You can even get it on your Mana Flask. So you really don't need to pay 40 divines for this jewel. Other ones, this is the Sublime Vision for Zealotry. This cost me 12 divines, I think. And then you use that with Eternal Blessing on Zealotry, which is nice because now we don't need to worry about mana reservation deficiency. Our mana pool becomes essentially just another health pool to pull from since we're using Mind Over Matter. And the Hierophant Ascendancy, this one, Divine Guidance. So 10% of damage is taken from mana before life. With Mind Over Matter means that it's 50% of mana damage is taken from mana before life. The Timeless Jewel I'm using, I was just looking at PoE Ninja, see what other people are using. This is a good one. I might swap it out as I experiment more with this build. I'm probably also going to try swapping out Replica Feral's Fur and using Ivory Tower and Indigon. See how that goes. Might try Crown of the Inward Eye. There's a lot of different ways to take this build, ways to build defensive layers. And I'm excited to try some of the other ones. This is what I'm doing for now. I will jump into Path of Building real quick and just show you some of what's going on in here. So this is EHP, quite a bit more than Occultist, and this build definitely feels a lot tankier than Occultist. This is the passive tree I'm going for. I'm only level 92, and a lot of the gameplay footage was recorded at level 90. So my DPS isn't quite as high as you're seeing in Path of Building and the gameplay footage. Some important things to note in the passive tree: taking mana clusters, taking crit multi. I'm using Blanketed Snow, Prismatic Heart on this one, and then Blanketed Snow and Sadist on this one, which works really well since we are shocking and igniting and chilling every enemy that we hit. This is just for some more crit chance so that we can get closer to crit cap. We're not quite there. Other important things to know. This is important when I go into how to actually get this DPS. As I mentioned in the Occultist video, Pledge of Hands, because you get 4 casts per Frostbolt, to get right DPS and POB you do 16 times. But in order to actually hit that, you have to actually make sure that you're shotgunning whatever you hit with 4 hits from each Frostbolt, which means that you're going to need more AoE on this build than you'd think to get that shotgun and get the DPS really feeling good. So in PoE Ninja, I see a lot of people using Intensify Support, which is good. It boosts your DPS a lot. As you can see, it's 127 million there. If I take it off, it drops to 86 million, which can be good. It's good for bosses, and it's good for things that hold still. But for things that move around, not so much, since it reduces your area of effect per intensity. I'll show you here. So I've got 3 intensity now. Say there's a boss standing right here in this circle. A lot of bosses have ways to jump you or teleport onto you so that you're standing really close to them. So when I throw out the Frostbolts and cast on it with intensity, as you can see, that last hit from the Frostbolts, a lot of times it won't actually hit the boss that's in front of you. So you're actually only hitting him 12 times with each cast instead of 16. If you can be further away, then it's a different story. As you can see, it's hitting him with the front and the back of the Frost Nova. But again, your AoE is pretty small, so when you're mapping as well, it's hard to hit a lot of things when your Frost Nova is so small. So I swap this out with Awaken Increased Area of Effect, also because I like large Novas. So again, if it's right in front of you and you cast, it's going to hit it every time with all 4 blasts, even if they're standing right in front of you. Another thing you could swap it out for, if you take some increased area of effect nodes on your passive tree. So you can take these ones over here, you can take these ones over here, they're all really close. These ones are also close. If you take that, then you can swap it out for increased critical strikes or increased critical damage support. So if we take off Intensify to Awaken Increased Area of Effect, it takes us back up to 100 million, which is a respectable amount of DPS. This is more, obviously, but it's less area of effect, so you need to make sure that you're getting area of effect elsewhere. Otherwise, the shotgunning's not going to work quite how you want it to. Another thing you could do is throw in an Enhanced Support along with increased or Awaken Increased Area of Effect if you want really big Ice Novas. So we throw in a level 4 Enhance. You can see it goes up to 6.8 meters from 6.3, which is actually a pretty big boost, but if you do that, you're going to have to take out either Cold Pen or Awakened Cold Damage, which drops your DPS even more. But depending on what strategy you're doing for mapping, this will actually feel a lot better. Another thing to note, I was actually doing that with slower projectile support, which I don't like using when I'm mapping. It's fine if I'm doing simulacrum or bosses, since you're standing still, it's a set arena. Nobody's really going anywhere, you're not traversing a lot of the map. So if I'm using Intensify without this, let me get my Intensify stacks up. The Frostbolts actually move out way faster from whatever you're trying to shotgun. So you're actually only hitting them with, 2, maybe 3 of your Novas out of each cast. So slower projectile helps a lot. If you're doing mapping, I would recommend taking these 2 out and doing like a Hex Touch support with Frostbite in here. There are other builds on PoE Ninja that are using a whole bunch of different buttons, and they're self-casting curses, they're self-casting Creeping Frost, and there's too many buttons to manage and it's hard. So I like to consolidate a lot with Arcanus brand. If you just need if you're just going to use a 4-link Frostbolt, which you can do if you use Awaken Increased Area of Effect instead of Intensify. So as you can see, even if it's standing right in front of me, it's going to hit with every single Nova. And then you just need a 4-link Frostbolt, and you can toss in a 6-link Arcanus brand here with Creeping Frost, Bone Chill, Assassin's Mark. You could anoint extra curse on your amulet instead and throw in Assassin's Mark and Frostbite with the Arcanus brand. You can throw in Awakened Unbound Ailments if you're having trouble getting max shock and chill effect on enemies. And then the Arcanus brand is going to cast Creeping Frost. You can also throw in Frost Bomb if you prefer Frost Bomb over Creeping Frost. And that'll get you max effect on everything. And it'll increase your single target DPS by an incredible amount. Again, if you're just going for speedy mapping, I would recommend Hex Touch with Frostbite or Elemental Weakness. That should just increase the speed of your mapping. Other things to note with Hierophant over Occultist for the build. As I mentioned, it takes time to ramp up your damage because each hit of Frost Nova is doing a lot less damage on Hierophant. You're just getting a lot more hits since it's casting 16 times instead of 8 times per cast. So it takes some time to ramp up, because as you can see, if you cast once, it takes about 3 seconds for all of them to cast. So to really get up to your max damage, you have to continuously cast for about 3 seconds, which takes half of that time for a cultist. So it takes some damage, or it takes some time for your damage to ramp. It's pretty noticeable when you're doing bosses, and especially when mapping. So Vol Ice Nova feels really good on a cultist, and on Hierophant it doesn't feel nearly as good. Because on a cultist, you've got Profane Bloom, you've got Herald of Ice, and so everything explodes and continues to explode, spawning more Vol Ice Novas, and it can clear several screens of mobs with a single click. With Hierophant, it doesn't really do that. It'll leave some rare mobs behind, maybe some magic mobs. And because your AoE is not as big on Hierophant, it also doesn't clear quite as much. So you really don't need to splurge for level 21 Vol Ice Nova. You can get away with a level 21 just Ice Nova Frostbolts, or a 21-23 if you're feeling really fancy. Also still using Immortal Call, cast when damage taken. I got Frost Shield on here. I still don't know if I like it. I don't use it very often. Using Flame Dash. I've also got Enduring Cry on here just for regenerating life. I thought I would try it. I'm not sure how I feel about it since it's just another button to press. And this build already has so many buttons to press. So, main ones I usually use is just Arcanus Brand for bosses. And then Frostbolt and Ice Nova. Another nice thing about a cultist over Hierophant is a cultist, you can Flame Dash around and kill stuff by just using Frost Nova. As you can see, you can't really do that very comfortably on Hierophant since you have to stand still for so long while you're casting. It's better when you can cast Vol Ice Nova since it's just a single cast. It doesn't echo. So with this, you pretty much always have to be casting on Frostbolts, where with the cultist, you do not. Another thing to note with this build, you can use Progenesis, which increases your tankiness by quite a bit. But if you're going to do that, you're going to need some reduced mana cost of skills. So in the path building, you can see I've got Progenesis here. Without it, max hit goes down a lot. I'm not quite sure where to fit reduced mana cost of skills in. You can fit it in on a flask, but you also don't want to reduce your mana cost too much since we're getting increased effect of Arcane Surge per mana spent recently. We are getting some less mana cost of skills from Sanctuary of Thought for the Hierophant Ascendancy. So it's just going to be a balance. We spend a ridiculous amount of mana with this build, so you can reduce mana costs just a bit, then you can throw in a Progenesis, you can throw in a Bottled Faith, you can throw in other things other than a Mana Flask. The Mana Flask is also helpful for when you take big hits with Mind Over Matter. Your mana will just disappear. So really, it's up to you on what you prefer. I kind of like the Mana Flask now, since I can already take such big hits. If we disable Immortal Call, because your Immortal Call is not always going to be up, it's just there for the first big hit. You can see we still have pretty big EHP pool, and with all of the recovery on kill we've got, and all of the leech that we've got, we recover pretty fast, especially with the instant leech that you can have either on a charm or on the That Which Was Taken jewel. And that is about it for this build guide. I'll showcase me doing an 8-mod Corrupted Feared, maybe a couple of Uber bosses. Let you watch those, see how it goes. If you have any questions or any comments, leave them in the comments below. I know there's a lot of other ways to take this build, so if you have suggestions or things that you want me to try out, happy to give that a go, because I'm fairly new to the Hierophant Ascendancy, so I know there's a lot that I could be missing here. Like I said, I want to try using Indigon and Ivory Tower, maybe change a couple of other things around. I know the Polaric Devastation Ring is also really good. It covers enemies in frost on hit, which also reduces the critical damage that they do, which is another good defensive layer. So there's a lot of things you can do with this build, a lot of different ways you can take it. Again, have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Thanks.